This is honestly a dream come true, not to be all sappy and shit. Yeah.
You may have heard of Beabadoobee by now. Over the past few months, she's blown up alongside of her new album, This Is How Tomorrow Moves, as well as internet culture getting a hold of her, and along many other reasons. For some reason, a guy who was on Love Island saying he was in love with her randomly helped play a hand in her recent spike in popularity. If you haven't heard of her yet, don't worry. I don't expect my 100% male audience to know every musician that falls into her niche, but don't let her niche stop you from finding some of the most fresh and authentic music that's being released currently. Before we get into her rise to stardom and her impact on other musicians, consider subscribing. It's free, and the bigger that number gets, the better person it makes me, because that's how it works. To start off our journey into the lore of Beabadoobee, we first need to understand who she is to begin with. The 24-year-old was born in the Philippines, specifically she was born in the Philippines, but she actually grew up in London, moving there at the age of 3. Growing up, she listened to a lot of Pinoy music, while also exploring 90s rock and pop music. In her teenage years, she went to a Roman Catholic all-girls school, the Sacred Heart High School, where she spent 7 years learning to play the violin. At 17, her taste in music had developed much more, and while listening to more indie rock than anything else, she picked up a guitar at 17. She taught herself to play using YouTube tutorials, with her initial inspiration to create music being Kimya Dawson in the Juno soundtrack. Bea has a lot of different influences on her music, and these influences continue to shine through on each of her songs and projects as a whole. While at Sacred Heart, she fell in love with indie rock, listening to a lot of Karen O, Alex G, Florist, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. In fact, Bea's first song she ever wrote on the guitar was released along with a cover of Karen O's The Moon Song. We'll talk a little bit more about the first song she wrote here in just a second, because that song is a vital piece of her career. But first, I want to look more into the influences that have sonically inspired the young star. Some of her other notable influences are artists such as Elliott Smith, most well known for his song Between the Bars. When listening to his music, you can clearly hear the influence the late singer had on Beabadoobee. She idolized Elliott for his melodies and lyricism, and even has an XO tattoo in tribute to his 4th album.
Stay up all night when the things you could do, he won't put your mind.
Bea was also heavily inspired by the Moldy Peaches, Simon and Garfunkel, and the Beatles, and the more you listen to her, as well as listening to these groups, it's clear as day. Something special though is you can tell Bea was inspired by them, but her music doesn't feel like some cheap copy or imitation of their music. She's found a way to make her music her own. Another musical influence is one of my personal favorites, none other than Mac DeMarco. She has a cool relationship with Mac, as her band actually supported him in Dublin at his show. Their music draws some similarities, fitting within a close-knit niche, and both of them have authenticity that shines through the music they release. Oh, and this doesn't necessarily deal with the music side of things, but Bea has shared a story of, after the Dublin show, they all got drunk at a karaoke bar and Mac gave her a stick and poke tattoo.
But yeah, no, we use vodka to sterilize my arm.
Her influences go even deeper than who we've discussed thus far too. Earlier I mentioned how growing up she listened to a lot of music from the 1990s, and it shows. In reference to the 90s and 2000s era of music, I find that time so interesting. I feel like the music resonates to me so much. I just think it's an iconic era of music. Bea has an ever-growing and diverse catalog of music that'll only continue to grow as the musician is still young and is just now starting to reach higher and higher peaks, recently headlining her first arena tour. She started releasing music back in 2017, where she released a cover of Karen O's The Moon Song. Alongside The Moon Song, she released her first song, Coffee, in September of 2017, and it was clear as day that with the release of this song, a star was born. Coffee was a perfect first release. While the song showed how new she was to writing, it's authentic and endearing and catchy as hell. It's all over the place, but that didn't stop it from gaining hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube and getting the immediate attention of the music industry. From there, she worked on and released her debut EP titled Lice in March of 2018, before a month later signing to Dirty Hit Records, the same label that rosters the 1975.
Dirty Hit has taught me, like, just to be myself. I feel like I don't want to be biased, but like, the label, like, it makes me feel comfortable with who I am. So I'm like, I can do whatever I want. I feel like I could kind of fuck around and they could still be like, yeah, that's fine.
She continued her writing, releasing her Patched Up EP in December of that same year. This EP is a good listen. It's a very soft and simple project with all the songs following the same vibe, but there's a couple songs that stand out more than others on the 7-song record. The first is track 2, titled Tired. The song is self-reflective, where B looks inward and expresses how she's feeling, which is relatable because these feelings are stress and feeling unorganized, something pretty much everybody goes through. The other standout track here is If You Want To, which is her talking to someone, telling them, if you want, you could stay with me in my bed. If you want, could go ahead and fix my head. With broader context, it's a lot easier to understand what she means when saying this, as the song covers her struggles with sleep paralysis and feeling like there are bugs in her head while trying to sleep, a topic she struggled with expressing to other people. Following Patched Up, B released Love Worm, which included another 7-song lineup, and you can tell with each project that her songwriting is improving. This EP opens with Disappear, a song about wanting to find the spark again in a loveless relationship, before the next track goes into a sense of longing, but it's a controlled longing. She knows what she's truly looking for. The third song on this project is her best song up to this point, in my opinion. She utilizes her influences to craft a song that comes together to create dopamine. The final song on this project is wonderful as well. Titled Soarin', it's very clear what and who she's singing about here. She's reminiscing about the good and the bad of her former boyfriend, who shares the same name as the song. After this, big things started to happen for her. She went on her first tour, supporting none other than Clairo. If you also don't know who Clairo is, she makes incredible music and you should check it out. But for reference though, Beabadoobee's music would fall somewhere on the spectrum in between Mac DeMarco and Clairo. B released Space Cadet, her 4th EP, in October of 2019, following her tour with Clairo, and then things began to change for her. She was able to release 2 songs through Spotify Singles, where she got to record at none other than Abbey Road Studios. After this, she won the Radar Award at the 2020 NME Awards, and then supported the 1975 on tour before the world shut down. Oh yeah, drawing back to her first song she released, Coffee, you remember it, right? Well, anyways, a rapper named Powfu sampled it for his 2019 single, Deathbed, Coffee for Your Head, which proceeded to blow up on TikTok, bringing Beabadoobee's first song to enter the charts. This sudden rush of success for her first song she ever wrote was something B struggled with. She stated, "I'm not going to lie, it was overwhelming. I kind of hated it. I hated more people knowing about the first song I'd ever written and not my others. I was so stubborn, but I grew into it and accepted that's just how life works. I was extremely grateful for its existence, and it's only given me more opportunities." It's really understandable how this could be frustrating. Your first song is always going to be something you consider your worst work in terms of just not really knowing what you're doing when you make it. And being a few years down the road with more music out that you're proud of, but then it's the initial song that finally blows up, well, it could easily feel like all your new stuff was made for nothing. And now, for her debut studio album, Fake It Flowers. This album was released to critical acclaim, earning B the title of Top New Rock Artist of 2020 by Billboard, and earning her a headlining tour throughout Ireland and the UK. Oh, and if you're wondering how it won her Top New Rock Artist when she'd been making soft-voiced bedroom music up until now, well, her 4th EP, Space Cadet, saw her delve more into the rock sound, and then Fake It Flowers was her fully stepping into an indie rock sound. Fake It Flowers is a wonderful album with standout tracks Care, Worth It, and How Was Your Day. Care was her expressing and venting her anger and frustrations throughout the song. Worth It is about how messy her previous relationship was leading up to the end, and How Was Your Day going into the feelings that can run through your mind after getting out of a relationship, just wanting to reach out with a simple text, knowing what mess it could lead into. B reaches even deeper on her next album, Beatopia, her most complex record thus far. However, the album released to mixed reviews, with this album sonically relating to alt rock. Personally, I think this album is a great listen, and I love this song, Don't Get the Deal. This song carries an up-tempo alt/indie rock melody and covers a familiar topic by now, her and her ex relationship both coming to the realization that they're falling apart. 2023 saw B release Glue Song, a single that was received well enough to warrant a re-release featuring Clairo this time, before she went on to open 12 shows of Taylor Swift's Eras tour. And a little over a month ago, B released her best album yet, her 3rd studio album, her first #1 album, This Is How How Tomorrow Moves. This album debuted at #1 in the UK and carries with it Take a Bite, the opening song, which is just so fun to listen to. She continued her trend of releasing 14-song albums, and with the release of this, she started to fully dive into stardom, with her blow up fully underway now. Beabadoobee is fully blowing up, stepping into the spotlight more and more every day, and is well on her way to being a superstar of the industry. We've discussed her music and life so far, but what specific moments played a huge role in pushing her onto more and more people's radars? Well, there's quite a few, so bear with me. Her first song, Coffee, is a monumental piece of her career. Without this song, nothing would be the same. Not only was it just her first song, obviously you're not going to go anywhere in music if you don't start making it, but very few people have started out their careers with their first song gaining hundreds of thousands of views. This song got her on the radar of not only the fans, but the music industry as a whole, leading her to getting signed by a major record label, immediately boosting her and opening her up to more resources than anyone else in her position. Then there's Powfu. Powfu sampled her song Coffee and used it to gain attention for himself, but also for her. You see, Powfu's version of this song has 713 million views on YouTube, over 1.7 billion listens on Spotify, and an unimaginably high number on Apple Music as well, we have to assume, with the trends. Powfu blowing this song up bigger than you could ever imagine caused Beabadoobee's name to be in front of all of those people as well, since it was originally her song, but also because she's credited as a feature on Powfu's version. More recently, Beabadoobee found herself in a weird internet culture situation when Rob from the latest Love Island name-dropped B, saying he loved her, and then running with the bit before B finally invited him to a show. Obviously, this is all in good fun, but it also introduced her name to a whole new demographic of people, gaining millions of overall views on TikTok, leading those who'd never heard of her to search for her. You also have to consider tours being a big reason for an artist's rise through the ranks of the music industry. Artists gain attention of fan bases not even there to see them, simply by performing before the main act on legs of tours, growing new audiences show after show. In fact, I've become a fan of BAM's simply through this. For reference, when I went to see the Driver era in Dallas, and Almost Monday opened, leading me to be a fan to this day over 2 years later. But with B, her journey was a bit faster than most in this sense. She was signed to a label shortly after the release of her first song, leading her to opening for Clairo not too long after in 2019. She followed this with opening for the 1975 and 2020 on their Music for Cars tour. After this, she had her own tour for the first time, in pairing with her debut album Fake It Flowers. She then supported Halsey in 2022, had her own tour for Beatopia in the same year, before in 2023 opening for Taylor Swift on the Eras tour, which is the biggest tour of all time. This year, she's now embarking on her tour for her newest album with the This Is How Tomorrow Moves tour. Her journey throughout the past few years, growing an audience day in and day out, has now culminated in growing her audience to where every song off her newest album has multiple millions of listens, with some bigger than others, such as the opening track, Take a Bite, hitting over 43 million listens on Spotify alone so far, all coming together with the most beautiful moment of her career, her first time headlining a stadium.
It's fun. I fucking love it. It's great. And I always mess up the song, so you gotta sing it with me, okay?